Hello, everyone. It's 12:45. Erin, are you ready to start?
Yep,
Okay, great.
we're ready.
All right. Well, first, I'd like to welcome everybody and as usual, give you a quick update on what we are looking at in this meeting and the tone for what we're talking about today. But first, I wanted to mention to everybody, over the last few meetings, we had been talking about the Everyday Accounts innovations. And back in January, we had the state caucus to look at what innovations were of most interest to the STIC members. And we found a few that were of high interest. And I wanted to just let you know the status of our proposed STIC incentive program projects. We had a very nice response from STIC members, and we ended up with 4 potential or proposed STIC incentive fund projects. And so based on the input that we had back in January, we noticed a lot of the projects of interest were related to TIM, crowdsourcing, workforce development, and those were our top 3 back in the when we did the caucus in January. So I just wanted to let you know about these projects. We ended up having 2 in crowdsourcing, 1 TIM project and 1 workforce development project. And after some discussion with all involved, we're pushing forward with the TIM project as it has the potential to go further on the awarded funds by progressing an EDC effort to the next innovation stage for the state of Texas. So we're going with the TIM project, and we talked about some of that at the last meeting, and we'll hear more from a couple of NCT COG members and TxSTIC members today to just talk more about that innovation effort. And so hopefully, you know a lot about what we've been doing with EDC. And if you have any questions about that, you're welcome to reach out to me. And of course, we'll have contacts for those specific topics as we go along. So today, that's the biggest tone today. I just want to tell you all and give you the news. And after that, we can go ahead and talk about research. We have a nice overview of our research at TxSTIC today. And with that, I think we're on to Kevin or Darren. Let's see. Who's ready?
Leave Kevin's first.
Okay. Thank you.
Still on mute, Kevin.
Thanks, appreciate that. I was chatting away to myself, I guess. I just wanted to thank you guys for being here again, same as Shelley has, and just to provide you with a couple of updates on a couple of items. The first is to give you an update. Darren mentioned in our last meeting that we were looking at doing an internal capture of innovations at TxSTIC. And right now we're still in that process of developing a process and tools and methods for assisting the agency with coming up a way of capturing some of the innovations across the districts and divisions. And in that, we're typically seeking, new approaches, practices, technologies, and procedures to help where needed in performing or improving work in the field or offices. So that's what the type of innovations that we'll be looking to capture here at TxSTIC, and also utilize that as a way of feeding into our current STIC, Texas STIC, or the STIC committee as a whole. So that's where we are with that internally. In addition to that, there's currently a national innovation push from AASHTO, from AII. It's called AASHTO Innovation Initiative, and they're currently seeking nominations for innovations. And I'll ask Shelley to send that out to all you guys after the meeting as well, so you're aware of what's out there or what's being requested from AASHTO. Regarding the research program for FY22, starting in September, we're looking at 39 new projects coming onboarding, which gives us a total of about 137 active projects for FY22, which is a good number. In addition to that, we're currently in our FY23 solicitation for problem statements, and that's open until September the 3rd. And hopefully you guys received our problem statement solicitation and have given some thought to any ideas or problems that we could potentially look at that would be good for research. I also want to share with you at this moment a video that we're putting together to kind of educate people on the types of research that we do and what we're looking for in research problem statements. Let's see if I can share my screen here. It's about 3 minutes, so hopefully it's not too long. And as a selfish plug, most of the projects that are being shown on this video are our high value research projects. That mean they were awarded as high value research from AASHTO and received a Sweet 16 award. Let me see, I'm gonna stop my video sharing here and share screen.
TxSTIC is looking for transportation problems we don't already know how to solve, or problems that need improved solutions for better use of time, increased safety, or more efficient workflow. The TxSTIC research program is often included in the National AASHTO High Value Research Recognition List and Sweet 16 Award. We need your ideas to continue this national success in our research program. Projects like these.
We take pictures from 2 cameras, and those 2 cameras, we find the same target on a bridge using those cameras, and then from there we locate them in 3-dimensional space, and that gives us bridge deformations. Before the system, TxSTIC would have to go in and attach instruments on bridges, and it's not an easy thing, especially if the bridge is over a creek or over a road. You have to put scaffolding, get up there, attach these instruments to measure deformations. It can take several days. And now with the DIC system, we can do it in the morning. In half a day, you could get up there, set up the cameras.
The purpose of Project 6880 is to foster use of new technologies for pavement rehabilitation. And the reason the project got started was to start using these tools in the energy sector areas of Texas where the pavements were utterly destroyed during the boom of the energy sector.
Recurring slope failures happen frequently in Texas. These failures cost us millions of dollars per year in Texas alone. We found that in some places more than 50% of failures are recurring failures.
What we were tasked to do was to actually make a web-based application that would allow TxSTIC engineers to quickly respond to this, and then it'll also recommend to them what types of slope repair methods are possible for that specific site's location.
What we want to be able to do is figure out if a drone, if using a UAV, can in some way benefit us. So does it improve safety? Does it give us better data, more accurate data, more complete data? Can we get the data more safely? Because of the unique perspective that a drone gives us, elevated above what we can see on the ground, it allows us to see around obstacles, maybe gather information that we're not able to gather in any other way.
The problem is they have some congestions in the corridors, and they do not want to build some more lanes because it's too expensive and not convenient. They just want to try to use their existing technology. For them, they have loop detectors, they have controllers. They want to see how to use this existing technology. They can achieve something to reduce the traffic congestion.
With this system, it monitors the volume and also occupancy on each lane, and based on that, it can adjust the traffic pattern based on demand.
If you know of a transportation problem we may be able to solve through research, you can get involved and be part of the solution. Submit your idea to TxSTIC Research and Technology Implementation Division using the form linked below.
So guys, that's kind of where we are with the research program and the type of ideas that we're looking for. So if you have any problem statements out there, or ideas that are good for research, then please submit those over. And if you need information regarding the forms itself, please contact me or any of the folks on my team, and we'll be glad to help you guys. Thanks.
Thank you, Kevin. That was great. Stole some of my things to talk about, but I don't know if you were noticing in the lower right-hand corner of those videos, year after year after year, our research universities in conjunction with, our transportation partners around the state, not just TxSTIC districts and divisions, but these are projects that are done in conjunction with MPOs and others, and addressing challenges that they have, locally oftentimes, but then those, typically obviously scale in application to, the state, but they win these awards at AASHTO because they have such high value, or they are deemed to have high value by the entirety of the research in the broader community AASHTO, that these are things that are shared nationally. And so it's a credit to the entire program, to all the research that supports what we do here at the department. So just fantastic. And he did tell you about the project calls. I know our Innovation Alliance members are already talking about, some ideas for potential future projects. So I encourage you to reach out to either directly to Kevin's team or through the Innovation Alliance to submit ideas, and we'll see if those don't turn into, the next fiscal year's research projects. He mentioned the innovation program. We're very close to getting that before our executive leadership and getting blessing on that. I'm confident that we will. It's something that we've long needed we had something like that, but to reestablish the idea of not just process innovation or cost savings measures, but innovations that are really happening across the state in transportation, and just sharing that broadly, small things up to large ones, so that, one, everybody can take advantage of them, and we can also recognize the continuing, movement forward by the department, and get those people to speak about, their ideas and share that broadly. Coupled with that, I guess some other announcements. We do have a new executive director for the department this summer. I think it's after our last TxSTIC meeting. So Mark Williams is our new executive director. We also have two new deputy executive directors, Brandy Hendrickson, who came from outside the department, from both AASHTO and Federal Highways, and also Indiana DOT background. And then Brian Barth, who's been with TxDOT for many, many years, and he took the other position. And we're working through the org structure now with those deputies and with the new executive, and certainly it will be a positive influence on the organization. We have both inside and outside knowledge that's going to contribute to what we do. TxDOT's back to work in the office. We're certainly a flexible work schedule, but people have been asking us, what's our situation, and we have been that way since pretty much the beginning of June. But it's still very flexible, and we continue to stay apprised of what's going on in the state. We did go to our first live conference just this week in Florida. It's Southeastern Association of State Highway Transportation Organizations. And I was able to highlight current research as well as planned research that the department's doing, and tie that in along with other innovation in connected and autonomous vehicle projects for all of those members of that organization. There are a number of grants that are out on notice of funding opportunities for grants that are out. And so ATC MTD grant is out, and aid grants went out. I know there are some organizations in the states that are working toward those. And from a TxDOT perspective, if you haven't already reached out to us, if you're looking for input, we need to know. It's a very difficult process to get our participation, certainly at the last minute. We're all well aware of the federal infrastructure drafts and the Biden administration's drafts, and we're staying on top of that. And can't really, not worth the time right now to guess at what they're ultimately going to be, but we're tracking all the different versions, and we're looking for what that means in terms of research, what it means in terms of innovation, of future grants, of future programs, of expansion of authorities within existing programs, so that we are ready to address those as that actually comes to fruition. And then I think the last one I want to hit on is a part of the legislative session. TxDOT was directed to support a couple of studies, and we're working on getting that going. And we were also directed to stand up an urban air mobility advisory committee and have a report done by the beginning of next September, not this one coming up, regarding current law and potential other laws that might facilitate the urban air mobility efforts in the state. And so we're on that, and we'll be getting that going very quickly as well. I think I've hit all the big ones I could think of, and I'll turn it over to Al.
Great, thanks, Darren. And it was good to see you in Orlando this past week. I don't know about you, it was a little surreal for me to see, humans in our natural environment talking again. It was so odd, and I wasn't I wasn't accidentally muted when I was talking live and in front of people, which is also odd for me. So I hope you all can hear me. A couple of follow-on thoughts to what you provided, Darren. You mentioned Brandy Hendrickson as your Deputy Executive Director of TxSTIC. You mentioned she worked for AASHTO. She was also an acting administrator for the Federal Highway Administration. And when she was in that role, she was very supportive of the EDC initiatives and innovation. So I expect her to be quite engaged and supportive of what you, everyone on this call is doing. In terms of the FHWA status, we are still in maximum telework status. We're allowed maybe up to 25% or so on a volunteer basis to go into the office, but there's been very few takers, especially in light of the Delta variant that's been going on. At this point, it's still unknown about when we are going to sort of return to the workplace. I hope to get a bit of an update. Actually, this afternoon, FHWA has an all-employee meeting, so I'll have to break away at around 2 o'clock to listen in on what's going on. You also mentioned that bipartisan infrastructure framework that was passed through a bipartisan subgroup of the Senate just this past weekend. That is still working its way through the full Senate, and the House still has its own ideas on what it wants to do. And so I agree that it's something like 2,700 pages or so, a lot to digest. But at this point, what ends up being signed into law might very well look a lot different than what it looks like right now. So we'll be keeping tabs on what's going on and be sure to share what's happening with legislation. Back to some EDC stuff. So the Accelerated Innovation Deployment Program, or AID, there was a notice of funding opportunity that was published last month for $10 million in grant aids. So the aid program provides funding as an incentive to accelerate, implementation and adoption of innovation. And so I'll put this stuff in a chat pod so you don't have to write any of this down. But if you were to go to grants.gov and put in a string of words and or numbers and letters for this actual opportunity, you can bring it up and then apply if you like. It is open to all state DOTs, federal land management agencies, tribal governments, etc. The application deadline is September 28th. EDC, so EDC 6, we are working closely with Darren's team to potentially host an EDC 6 booth at the short course coming up in October. We did this very successfully back in 2019, which I think is the last time there was a short course. So we're hoping to do the same again this year. It was quite successful. We're also on the heels of introducing EDC 7. So a basic time frame rather for EDC 7 is to start soliciting ideas on initiatives sometime this fall, and then go through the selection process and identify those initiatives in the summer of next year, the summer of 22, followed by virtual summits in the late summer and early fall of 22. And we decided to go virtual really based on a lot of feedback that we've been receiving. We usually would have a summit somewhere and people travel to a location to learn more about them. And we provide funding for a small number of people to be able to attend, but have found that virtual summits really allow for a much greater number of people to be engaged and participate. But we're also going to do a little bit of a hybrid approach by following the virtual summits up with in-person peer exchanges that we'll learn more about sometime coming up probably next year. So those, again, virtual summits to be late summer, early fall of 22, followed by in-person peer exchanges sometime after that. A few months ago, back in June, RTI submitted a TxSTIC Excellence Award nomination, and the award was, or the nomination was to really showcase the work done by Texas LTAP on that strategic workforce development effort and project. I think we can get an update on this later this afternoon. That project was funded with a $100,000 TxSTIC incentive grant in fiscal year 21. Finally, as a reminder to me and to everyone, so I got this EDC newsletter, electronic newsletter, just a little while ago, actually. It kind of provided me with an opportunity to see what is happening and keep engaged on things that I think are most applicable or interesting to me, and anyone can subscribe to that. So in the chat pod, and you can customize what you want to hear about and learn about. It's not just FHWA stuff. In fact, it's mostly what others are doing. So if you're interested in subscribing to that newsletter, come directly to your inbox. I'll post how to do that in the chat pod as well. And with that, Shelley, I'll turn it back over to you. Thanks.
Oh, thank you. That was a really good update. Thank you, Darren, for giving them all the updates for TxDOT. I had thought about a couple of those, for example, the AID, and I'm glad that you guys brought it up. The other thing I want to do now is, we have a little bit of time, but I do appreciate, Al, I appreciate you bringing that up regarding the TxSTIC Excellence nomination that we put out there. We had some people endorse that, and we really appreciate that assistance. And we really look forward to hearing about that. I hope it's good news, but it was a good effort either way. And we're still talking about that today, and we'll have an update later on in our agenda. And Ken, if you're prepared, you're welcome to start early, and you have a little more time if you need it.
Thank you. Yeah, thank you for inviting me, and appreciate being here this afternoon. And I'm going to give you an update on the efforts that we've been doing for Weather Responsive Management Strategies project that, as many of you know, was one of the EDC 5 emphases and is the project for that. And if you go to the next slide, the big thing that I wanted to report about in this TxSTIC meeting was that during the course of the project for the last year and a half to 2 years, we have engaged in a number of research activities, but also a real cornerstone of the project was to be able to detect where winter operations treatment activities were happening on the roadway. And although our research agenda was quite on schedule, the partnerships that needed to go on between vendors and the district and folks here at the university were delayed by COVID. And there were a lot of things that were difficult in terms of be able to get right equipment and so forth. We are grateful to say that RTI has decided to extend the project through this next winter season so that we can properly pilot the capability of tracking winter weather roadway operations within 1 or 2 more districts. For sure, we have on our contract to pilot within 1 district, and we'll be looking, of course, at a north district that has a lot of winter weather, perhaps Amarillo or Lubbock. But we also want to reach out to another district as well to have a parallel effort going on to be able to pilot efforts. Beyond that, with what we've done recently, we have installed a sensor kit on a vehicle in the Abilene district. That's that vehicle 3300K that you see in the picture down below, which has a V-box spreader and a plow. And we do have the ability now to send across the existing Verizon Connect vehicle telemetry system that is on all the TxDOT vehicles, the detection of whether the plow is down and working and whether the V-box spreader is on and spreading aggregate on the roadway to be able to help in de-icing efforts. Meanwhile, we've been continuing communications with Texera efforts. That's an application that runs on the ArcGIS enterprise platform that's being deployed within TxDOT, and making it so that that same live data and historic data can appear within Texera applications and be able to show where and when vehicles are treating roadways. With that, we want to be able to extend ideas on not only being able to view where treatment activities are happening, but be able to also act upon historic data and understand where are there gaps in treatment, or where are there places that treatment might be getting old and where roadways need to be retreated, especially around places where rain has come through or where there's bridges or vulnerable sections of roadway. We're also looking into ice formation prediction models that might be able to help us be able to detect where at-risk roadways need to be treated and where places need to be treated again. And we also looked at the data that we did collect from our weather stations that we had deployed earlier in the project. One of the visualizations from that is in the graph that's on the right there, looking at wind speed compared with temperature and seeing if we can make some sense of that in a predictive fashion. Can you go to the next slide? Also, I'd like to announce that later this month, on August 24th, going from 9 a.m. to noon, we're going to have our project webinar. Originally, this was going to be the webinar that wrapped up the project, but since we're extending the project, this is going to be middle of the road, showing what we've looked at so far, recapping a lot of what we've discovered and learned from the sensors that we deployed, and also going through an end-to-end process on our experiences with installing the sensor kit on the Abilene vehicle that would allow for tracking of winter weather operations, whether the plow is down and whether there's brine being sprayed. With this, we're going to be communicating with districts to see how can they help us in their piloting efforts. And this is going to be really geared for management and operators in roadway treatment and anybody else who's interested, both within TxDOT, but also in MPOs or cities or other related agencies. And if you go to the next slide, this is my thank you slide, but I have my email there. So please reach out to me if you'd like information on this workshop, and I can send you information. Some of you actually already have gotten the Save the State email, and we're going to be sending out a Teams invite fairly soon. So that's all I have to report, and I welcome any questions that you have at this time.
Well, I'll ask you a question. So
Go ahead.
as it relates to, so we're able to track snow plows, and I think you had talked about other environmental conditions being, next on this. So kind of where are we in the overall universe of those conditions and what we're working on?
Yes, so this had to do with weather responsive management strategies, and working with the Abilene district, their number one concern was winter weather treatment. So we really focused our efforts on this project with just being able to track that activity, but also looking at weather stations that can help with painting a bigger picture of what's happening in the whole district, and really using things that we want to be able to extend to other districts that would also be interested in this. But we also found that a lot of the same technology that we're looking at for being able to track the deployment of materials onto roadways also could happen with spring treatment of roadsides for pesticide or herbicide, that vegetation control that happens in some districts. Exact same technology that would be used to track whether or not the sprayer is turned on or off. And there's some of that same technology too that has to do with trying to get the data into a place that's centralized and useful for a number of different personnel within a department. So these are areas that are all relevant. And incidentally, as I'm speaking, the FHWA road weather management stakeholders meeting is happening at this moment. And they also speak of a number of items, but of course, the number one interest that they all speak about has been winter weather operations.
And so as you guys are doing this and doing all the testing, are any, have you identified any technologies where like, it'd be great if we had a ready to use technology that does this, that would enhance what we're trying to achieve? Is there anything kind of standing out in that way?
The number one topic has been just finding out whether there's treatment happening on the roadway. And that's really basic compared with some of the things that say Minnesota or Indiana are deploying. They have different sorts of priorities, of course, in those DOTs in those states, where they have a lot of advanced technologies like being able to monitor the flow rate of the material being put on the roadway, or being able to automate the deployment as the vehicle goes on certain sections of roadway. Here, it's just been really the meat and potatoes. Where are we deploying? And also, can we supplement our currently handwritten brine logs with something that can be backed up by an automatically collected mechanism? But there's also a lot of interest too in being able to detect whether there's ice on the roadway. And that's why we're deploying or working with a couple of on-vehicle sensors. And also we have an in-place sensor that's deployed within the maintenance yard that can basically give us a continuous surface temperature measurement.
So you kind of answered that too. There are potentially some sensors both on and off the vehicle that could help with, because it's not just about putting down the treatment, it's about what happens after the treatment.
Of course.
And you also, I mean, and then you've identified potentially some improvements we can actually make to our systems. Yeah, it's great. Our focus may be, the meat and potatoes, but if flow rate can be measured and things like that, I'd love to have those captured so that we can make sure that we're expressing that with fleet and looking for those opportunities too.
And we will be talking about that during the workshop. I think right now there's going to be a lot of interest about, say, the meat and potatoes I just mentioned. The other thing I would say too is a more widespread deployment that's better than, say, just 4 vehicles within a district, to be able to have many weather stations and all the vehicles equipped with such technologies, and a go-to center of GIS-enabled applications that really take in that data and let operators and managers do really cool things with that data. I think these are the number one priorities that we should be looking at.
And anything about micro weather sensors? Does anybody express a need for that relative to this, or that's a separate issue?
It's an ongoing interest. When you say that, you're talking about really low cost sensors that could be in pavement sensors or roadside sensors.
Or just that we're capturing the weather conditions specific to that spot, either that we own, that the infrastructure owner operators owned, or we have access to data that maybe weather groups have.
Yes, yeah, thanks for that clarification. So within the project, we have 5 low-cost kind of prosumer weather stations that are not nearly as expensive as some of those that some of the northern states that get a lot more snow and bigger budgets on this can have. Things from Vaisala and Idris. They're called something else now, but regardless, we're looking at really more entry level, but still a really comprehensive level of data. And with that, we're able to fill in the gaps between those stations. But of course, if there's more stations on the roadway, then our data is more accurate.
Thank you.
Are there any other questions for Ken? If you do have any throughout the agenda, you can go ahead and text that or type that in text directly to him or to the group.
Thank you so much.
Thank you. We appreciate you coming on again and telling us how things are going with that fantastic project. And it is high interest, and you're right. There are a lot of conflicts right now. That is one of them, the Road Weather Management Conference. I was going to go to that as well, but we have several things this afternoon that many people are vying. You know, they have to go to that instead. So we might lose some people here in a little bit, but we have some great presentations for anyone who's able to stay on. And speaking of a very good project, the STIC incentive project that was mentioned earlier by Al, we're going to have Ray Belk give us an update on the Strategic Workforce Development Project. Hi, Ray. Are you good?
I'm here. Yeah, thank you, Shelley. I appreciate it. Thank you, everyone, for your time this afternoon. I do believe we have a slideshow. If Aaron or Amelia, if you could get that up for us, please. Some of this I'm not going to belabor again because it's a repeat of everything, but we actually received the grant. It was approved by Federal Highway back in September of last year, 2020, and we started work. We're coming to near an end of the project itself with the end of the fiscal year coming up on us this month. But, you know, we went through the process of identifying the research, the key stakeholders, the partners and everything. I do want to mention that there's been numerous human resource officers across the state of Texas in cities and councils and the American General Contractors Association that have been heavily involved with this project. And it would not be a success if it were not for those folks out there in the counties that helped us out. Next slide, please. We did develop what we call a catalog and matrix. And this was actually put into a thing that I call the guide. And it's been adopted by numerous counties, and I'll talk about that later. But it's really feels good to go out, sit down and talk with county folks, the commissioners, the county judges, the human resource officers, and they say, and they hold it up and they go, this is exactly what we've been needing here in the state of Texas for our road and bridge personnel, because they simply did not have the time, the resources, or the funding to do that. So they've really taken heart to it, and they're actually able to move forward with developing. Originally, 19 job descriptions were built. We did add 2 later, but they're very extensive. They're built to that are very similar to job descriptions that the state auditor, Texas State Auditor's Office uses, where we have summary of functions, distinguishing characteristics. At TxSTIC, that's what we call our level cutters, where we went from like a maintenance technician 3 to a maintenance technician 4. We use the same genealogy there, the duties and responsibilities, the KSAs, etc. Also, you know, with the background that I have, we tied training to that for what we called either low cost or no cost training for all those jobs. And I've been heavily engaged with a lot of counties out there developing specific training programs for them, because it's really been amazing that there's not a lot of training taking place out there with road and bridge folks. Here you see a cover shot of the guide. We have placed it on the website for the LTAP site, totally downloadable, and the folks love that. Next slide, please. There's been a lot of marketing outreach. There's been numerous emails, dispersals of information, and it all started back in January before we actually went to the VG Young Institute of Government, County Government conference. And lots of folks actually showed up there. And again, it felt good at that conference. It was the first one that had been held from all the COVID. And they said, I'm here to pick up my guide. So it's like, here you go. We're happy to give it to you, and also give you some information where you can download it. So we've done this for all the Texas Association of County Conferences all the way through. Next slide, please. This just gives you an idea of the conferences that we've attended, the number of hard copy guides that have been out there. We don't have a way of tracking what has been downloaded, but there's just a lot of copies going out there continuously. The last conference that we attended was here back not even a month ago in Waco. That was the last TAC conference until the end of this month, and it'll be the legislative update conference that'll be down in Austin. We'll be attending that. Also, we have some other conferences that are already set up, and I am presenting at several of those about this project and what the LTAP program does in general with the Texas Municipal League, the American Public Works Association, the West Texas Rural Counties, etc. Next slide, please. This is a handout that we've been producing, or is actually being provided for all attendees of all LTAP courses that are done by the university. Say, for example, if an instructor goes out to teach a work zone class, this handout is also given to the attendees of the class and the supervisors to let them know about the program. So it's another outreach way that we did about what could be used. We've already written one article, it's been published in the Better Roads, Safer Roads. That was for the winter 21 edition. And a second article has already been written and drafted. It'll be produced in either the summer or the fall publication also. Next slide, please. Tasks accomplished. We could started, tasks are actually the on-site, hands-on with the folks in the counties. That started on March 21st and will go through the 27th. The sites and visits, I've been to actually 12 counties that have adopted the project in full. And they've said, we're taking the job descriptions and we're either rewriting ours completely based on yours, or we're taking them and we're updating things like that. So we have had 12 take it from they had nothing to work with. 4 counties are updating and 2 counties have solid JDs, but they're updating and that's actually changed from a meeting that I had last week with Wilson County. They're going to be, it'll make 13 counties that have adopted the project. And as I get out and talk to other folks, it feels good that they're saying, yes, we're taking things in. Next slide, please. Hunt County, we actually had a formal launch of the program up there on the 20th and 21st. We had 2 other folks in the LTAP program up there with myself, Jack Pettyjohn and Calvin Strawbridge. We did a kickoff with all the employees of the precincts and the commissioners. We placed the road and bridge folks through a skill assessment, and we also delivered the public safety works overview. So this was actually the beginning of the program for them. It was adopted by the full commissioners court the month prior. The county judge really had a great quote that stuck and resonated with me. And he said it would be selling the residents of the county and the employees of the county to not take advantage of the program that LTAP offers. And he was going to do everything he could to help put the word out there about the great things about the project itself and what the LTAP does in general. I've also got some scheduled meetings set up in the future in September for San Patricio, Willis and Hidalgo counties. And I've still got counties that are responding because they like to actually do things like this in the fall and the early spring because they're just like TxSTIC, chip seal season. I remember that when I was with TxSTIC. It's hands off, let's get out there and get things done. And then we'll take that little bit slower time and we'll get some things done for as far as development. But we'll continue to do those outreaches as well. Next slide, please. An interim project report was published back in February on the 15th, and I'm not going to go into details about that. If you do need a copy of that, you can reach out to either Shelley at RTI or to Aaron Anderson Townsend or myself, and we can get a copy of that into your hands. Next slide, please. Validation of product. This is where I did a sample of 75 counties and said, what are you doing with the project or with our product that we produce for you, if anything? And this was some actually querying at conferences and then recording the information or me picking up the phone or sending emails. With 66 counties surveyed, 66% of those counties surveyed said they're going to use it fully, partially, or updating of the JDs provided. And 21% they'll be using them in the future. We only had 1 county so far that said, no thanks, we're good with what we got, we don't want to change. And that was kind of an aberration. But for that type of product validation, I felt very, very good about the project and what we've been able to do. Next slide, please. Recalibration took place with Wichita County and some others. They asked for 2 additional job descriptions to be built, and that was for a general labor 1 and 2 position because there are several counties that do summer hires or temporary folks. And it turned out that Ector County and Lubbock County like that as well, and they adopt that as well. So we put that information out there, and it's been on the website as well. Next slide, please. A final report was generated and it was sent forward to TxSTIC and FHWA, and it provides a recap of everything that we've done. Now, since we're still in the project, but they call it a final project, I will be doing a supplemental report of activities that have taken place from July 15th through the end of this fiscal year, and that'll be coming forward with the additional activities taking place. Next slide, please. Final summary, 9 counties. From the Metro Urban and Rural Human Resource Officers helped us out. 120 job descriptions were downloaded or obtained or examined for the project. We looked at a total of 21 built a total of 21 job descriptions. The guide was built, it's out there. Over 600 copies of the guide have been estimated in hard copy at conferences, and we still have some more conferences to go. It's estimated that over 10,000 copies of the guide have been distributed in PDF format through constant contact and other outreach processes that we've taken. And next slide, please. A county count by county poll yielded metrics. And this was very interesting at the very beginning. The 190 counties of the 254 did not have any type of job description at all at the beginning, but they all have it now. Timed visits, the 90-day time frame, and we'll be doing more. 25 new counties are known and documented to have picked up LTAP now for services they had previously not used at all from the program as a result from this outreach that we started in February. So that's a big deal for us. It really is. The partnership with the Texas Association of Counties continues to grow. And this is going to help each of us individual as organizations to build and offer what we do out there. We're not in competition what we're doing as far as services or trainings. We actually complement each other quite well. And we hope to be developing that with the Texas Municipal League as well. We've got to develop a better understanding of what the counties need when it comes to their local strategic workforce development. And the last thing there are the percentages that we did with validation. Next slide, please. And I'll open it up for any questions anyone has.
I see that Kirk has his hand. Yeah, his hand raised.
Hey, Ray, it's Kirk Flauber, Federal Highways. Congratulations on a great project, developing the guide, and you said 10,000 copies were distributed statewide, and electronically by PDF. One question I had was whether or not salaries for these different types of job descriptions were included in the guide.
No, they were not, for a couple of different reasons. One of the things that I learned going out to counties, there's numerous different models that the cities and counties use for compensation. And it's something that a lot of them are really trying to get a handle on in some ways, because of the worst case scenario is they pay everybody on the crew the same. And then they wonder why guys that have been there 20 years with a high experience are making, say, $20 an hour, and they hire somebody in with no experience and he makes $20 an hour. They wonder when those guys leave. So we didn't attach any salary information in that regard. Others do have competitive process. They do have a true career ladder process. And we're trying to move some of those folks that direction. A lot of the other counties also, especially the rural ones, they're very budget constrained. Some are blessed with the oil and gas industry and they have additional revenue. Others do not have it. So it would have been too fuzzy or too big of a ball to try to take on with this project itself. It was never meant to be a part of the scope of the project, but that is something that certainly could be done. I do know of about 4 or 5 counties, they have hired outside consultants to do salary surveys for them. And they pay pretty big bucks too to have things done like that because it's pretty expensive.
Thank you.
That was a good question. Thank you for that. Any other questions for Ray?
Well, again, thank you all very much. And it's been great. It's been a great project. Really enjoyed it.
We appreciate your efforts for sure. Thank you so much for giving us that update and summary. And If anyone has any questions for Ray, you can type them in the chat, or you can email TxSTIC or Aaron or myself, and we can get those conveyed to Ray. And next up, we have Dr. Nazarian with the Center for Transportation Infrastructure Systems. Today is going to be talking to us about the Advancing Electric Transportation and Sustainability. Well, he's going to speak about something specific, which he'll tell you all about, but that is the general topic. So please help me to say hello, Dr. Nazarian. Are you available, sir? I can't hear you yet, so.
Yes,
Okay.
sorry.
Oh, great, okay.
Uh,
Great, thank you.
Let me bring myself up too, so.
Sure, we're glad to have you.
Yeah, sure, I appreciate the opportunity. You know, I just noticed that in August of 1981, I came to Texas and started working for TxSTIC on a research project, and 40 years later, I'm still in debt to TxSTIC, and thank you for the opportunity to come back.
Well, yes, I'm glad to have you. That's a lot of valuable experience. Thank you. Looking forward to hearing from you.
I appreciate it. Well, I would like to just bring your attention the news center that was formed called Aspire. Aspire is a mouthful for advancing sustainability through powered infrastructure for roadway electrification. This is a 10-year concentrated effort, $50 million funding from the National Science Foundation to start to work with the governmental and private entities to essentially promote and improve the electrification of the infrastructure, you know, roadways. There are 4 of us that are partners on this project. Utah State is our lead institution. We have University of Colorado, Purdue University, and us. We are working on this topic. The bottom line is that we are looking for a sustainable and equitable future for transportation. One of the issues is how to make us all breathe better and live better, and decrease the unhealthy particulates in the air. And essentially, we just try to improve health, improve prosperity, and provide equity and access to all the communities. So we're gonna work towards the widespread electrification across all classes, not only the personal vehicles and the passenger vehicles, but we are thinking about all the way to the 18-wheelers and the big trucks. And again, usually NSF is the fundamental research. This program is different. The goal over here is adoption. So we were trying to come up with a way, help to adopt the technology. Again, these are the 4 universities. We have a partner in New Zealand. The government of New Zealand is heavily investing in in technology for the electrification infrastructure. And we are partners with them. We learn from each other. We have some universities that they do a specialty work. For instance, we have Virginia Tech on the DC campus. They are in the data security and data management. And for instance, we have University of Colorado, Colorado Springs. These are people who work with the battery improvement and second use of batteries, you know, so that we can minimize that aspect of it. We are working with 4 national laboratories that they are also working in this area. We are exchanging personnel and students. That's part of the workforce development internship program extensively, and ideas. We have around 24 industry members from primarily the United States and some of the countries that are already started implementing some of that, like Israel and Sweden, Germany. And we have some innovation partners. The innovation partners are departments of transportation, nonprofits, governmental organizations, and these are the people that would help so that we can partner and to improve the technology. These are the examples of the industry and innovation companies. We have 48 of them. I cannot show you all of them right now. And it starts from major car companies to major truck companies to consultants and construction companies. Those who provide technology for electrification, and of course a number of Department of Transportation and the transportation authorities, as you see over here. So the bottom line is that the goal is a convergent. Convergent, it means that we get areas that are usually don't talk to each other and combine them and try to solve a major problem. So what I'm showing you over here on the left is the electric network of the United States, and on the right, you would see the road networks. You see that if you look at the density, there is some, they are fairly comparable to each other. Now, if we wish and get all the internal combustion cars today and return them to electric, well, they may have solved one problem for in terms of the pollution and other issues, but we are causing another problem for the power network because there is one-to-one correlation between them. If every car becomes electric, then we have to double the production of electricity, and that has to be done in a very coherent manner. And of course, there is the other thing is 5G, so that we can work between the two. Just briefly, so what we are just trying to do, we just not married to one technology. Our goal is to utilize the proper technology at the proper time, at the proper location. We are looking at wired and wireless charging systems. We are looking at the smart charging across grid. One of the issues is when you go to your super duper charger, fast charger, you're just basically causing a surge into the electric system. That means that the electric companies, they have to generate a lot more capacity, and that means that, you know, we have to pay a lot more for that surge in the electricity. So if we can do it smartly so that we do not overload the power, we can reduce the amount of power capacity that we need. We are just trying, again, optimize the power and transportation network, and we are trying to have synergy with the new technologies like connected autonomous vehicle that's particularly good for this purpose. So let's look at where we are. We are talking about the engineered system, which is basically a ubiquitous charging. We are by co-optimizing the power, transportation, and charging infrastructure for different classes and different users. Then enabling technologies, we don't have one technology that we are married into. We are just looking at all the solutions, the system of systems. When it's appropriate, it would be charging at home. When it's appropriate, putting a microgrid and charging the car wirelessly. And to do that, we have to address 4 different groups of research. This is where the convergence comes. Transportation was one. This is a technology that adoption is critical. You know, we cannot work in the vacuum. We have to work with the policymakers, with the DOTs, with the economists and everybody to make it a solution that is workable. We are looking at the power, both in terms of the battery, how to reduce the size of the battery, make it more efficient, how to basically integrate the grid and the charging system to balance. And we need a lot of data from how to charge while you are driving and charging to Internet of Things, to the optimization of the charging, so that we are not causing problem for the electric grid. So we have around 40 projects with 68 faculty started on this project with the partners in innovation and industry, as well as the Department of Energy and Department of Transportation. One is extreme fast charging. How can we make the charging faster so that we don't have to sit down for a long time to charge between charges? How can we get rid of that range anxiety? The second one is pavement integrated wireless charging. In that one, we just basically, like the new way of charging your phone, we were hoping that you can charge your car. And there are some prototypes that has been done in Europe and Israel already. We are looking at the smart and secure charge management so that, we can essentially optimize the need for the power. We have a system of system integration. It means that finding the best solution at the best place at the best time. And of course, we have a market and workforce development. This is very critical. That's one of the requirements of the National Science Foundation, that we have the workforce to do the technology when it comes. So we have 6 thrust research, we call it. One is transportation. Some are working on the network, how to optimize the network, and some how to build the infrastructure so that we are not, we have a system that is constructible and adaptable, it's maintainable. We have a group that are doing adoption, working heavily on the user acceptance and public policy and the economic aspect of it, environmental aspect. And we have a workforce development that it starts from K to 12, and then to the community colleges, and then to the universities and professional schools. The power grid, we already talked about them. They are just basically trying to optimize the power system and the use of it. The data analysis, data fusion, artificial intelligence, cybersecurity work is done on the data. And one very important thing is the culture of inclusion. So how we can be inclusive, both in terms of the educators, students, community professionals, and engagement of everyone. So how can we make it equitable and bring the culture of inclusion to make it usable for everyone? I'm just going to skip on that for the sake of time. I have some of the type of projects that we are working on. And I want to talk about the facility. We have significant facilities in the 4 universities. We are essentially in charge of the transportation side of the system. But at the Utah State, we have a test bed that I'm going to discuss in a second. We have accelerated pavement testing at Purdue. We have visualization and simulation. This is what you're seeing is actually a part of the city of Denver, and they have the transportation and the electric grid visualized, and they're just looking at the surges and different aspects of it. The jewel of the facilities that we have, we call it the system of system test bed. This is an actual quarter-mile test circle that you can charge your car, your bus or car or whatever these two, a bus and a car that you see over here. They can just basically continuously work without any charging. And if you see, there is a renewable energy over here, microgrid, so that we can have 0 CO2 emission with the system. This one is being now expanded, as you see in this. This has not been expanded, but with the expanded Aspire headquarters, we would be able to essentially build pavement sections and bridges in the facility so that we can prototype it before we go to the field. Some of the partnerships and some of the demonstration projects. One that is very exciting to us is the Salt Lake City Inland Port Authority project. This is an area that is multimodal. So we have trucks coming in to fill up and go out. We have airports right outside of this picture. You don't see it. We have 2 interstates intersecting, and we have railroad coming very close by. And how to basically electrify this facility so that the pollution would be minimized, because this is where there is a lot of sitting idle of the trucks and things like that is causing some concerns with the neighborhood. And you know, this is, as you see, there are from hoteling, it means that you charge the car when they're in idle, to all the way smart charging and static and dynamic charging as you're driving slowly. And essentially it would be a prototype. We have another project with the Central Florida Expressway that's in the works. And we have a project in Indiana. We are excited about that. It starts on I-70. It's a section of the I-70 being electrified. And we have a large number of other projects that we are discussing with our partners. One thing I want to focus on is this engineering workforce development. This is one of the mandates that we have. And this is a graph I want to show you. We usually discuss in the education as a leaky pipe. So the students start from the middle school, let's say they start dropping out and they never be found, and they go less and less and less of the students go through till they finally get their degree and go up. And whoever falls out, they would usually not coming back. We have worked very diligently. We have come up with a model. We call it pathways and roadways. And essentially, we are working with different pathways that when people drop out, they can come back. They can be dropped out because of voluntary or family situations or any other reasons. They can go out and they come back. They can finish the high school, go out, do military, come back and go and get an associate degree or a bachelor's. Go back for some reason and then come back into the workforce, or just go back and get higher and higher all the way to the PhD. I wish I had a little bit more time, but for the sake of time, we are very excited about this, and I'm just going to end it over here. The bottom line, if you're looking at the sustainability goals of the United Nations, there are 17 of them, and a substantial number of these things we are trying to address in this project. Finally, I just wanted to show you this one more time and emphasize that Lone Star is fine, but as you see, Texas, we have only one pin. I'm hoping that we would extend our collaboration at the local and the state level so that we can be one of the leaders of the electrified infrastructure in the United States. With that, this is my information. We love to work with you guys. We love to partner and go after demonstration projects at Department of Energy and Department of Transportation. There are a lot of efforts right now. And as you may know better than me, there are a lot of bigger efforts just came out. And please come and visit us in El Paso. This is our headquarters for the Aspire, and we look forward to seeing you over there. Again, I want to thank you for all the time and listening to me, and I'll be glad to answer any questions that you might have.
Thank you so much for that good overview of that project. It's very interesting to see how many people are involved. And Darren, I think, Darren, you wanted to talk? I saw you up here.
I just said, what is this? Is there a fixed timeline on this, or is this just a continuing effort?
This is a 10-year commitment from the National Science Foundation, so $50 million. So after that, we have funding coming up from the partners like Ford, and I showed you the list of the industrial partners. So the goal of NSF is $1 for $1 of NSF. They would like to see $2 to $3 from the industry, and that's what we're working on.
And I do think we can help you with some pins on that map.
Yeah, we are looking forward to seeing a lot of pins over there. The only thing that we want to have one is the star, but other than that, we look forward to working with you guys.
Thank you so much for that. What a great thing to talk about here. I think that's so important these days. So it was very appropriate. And if anybody has any more questions, you still have an opportunity. I don't see any hands. So are you going to stay on, or would you prefer they reach out to you separately with questions?
No, I will be here.
Okay, great.
Hmm.
Okay, well, oh, I hear something.
I just want to thank you for the opportunity. Thank you for being, as always, very supportive. Thank you.
Yes, sir. Thank you. And next up, we have a break. If you would all like to take a quick 5-minute break, we can come back at 2 o'clock. And then we'll hear from, well, we can come back at 2 o'clock or 2:10. It's up to you guys, but if Susan's willing. Susan, are you on?
I'm on.
Do you want to have the break happen first? Or do you want to come back at 2? You have any preference?
I don't have any preference, whichever works for you.
Okay, let's go ahead and take a break. Let's come back at 2:05. Does that sound good, Aaron? Did you hear me?
Sounds good.
All right, thanks, guys.
Yes, I'm here. Sounds good.
All right, 2:05 then. Can you put that on the screen for us just in case, Aaron?
Yes, let me see if I can take that down and edit it real quick.
Okay, thanks. Okay, it is 2:05, and I was hoping that by advancing the schedule slightly, I was hoping that might give us just a little extra time. Susan, I'm so looking forward to hearing what you guys have been up to. I'm sure you've been busy. I can only imagine, but I mean, knowing how everything is virtual now, it was a big undertaking. So I want to hear all about it.
All right, we're happy to share.
Thank you, Susan. I can, okay. I'm waiting to see your slides. There they are. Okay.
Okay, perfect, perfect. Yes, hello, everybody. I'm real excited to be here today. My name is Susan Howard, and I'm the Public Involvement Director out of TPP. I was excited to be asked to present today because I see a lot of synergies between the mission of the Texas State Transportation Innovation Council and the vision of our team. So I'll be walking you through some of these synergies and some highlights, some of the innovations that we've experienced in this last year and a half, looking at a kind of a statewide perspective. Next slide. So we'll be going over these items today, the TxSTIC public involvement policy, kind of an overview of my team. For those of you who may not be familiar with my team, the successes that we've seen with virtual public involvement, the expansion of those methods, and a little preview of some things that we have in the hopper coming soon. Next slide. So I know that y'all's mission communicates the heart of who you are, and we really feel the same way about our policy that was signed by the Texas Transportation Commission back in January of 2011. I don't know how many of you realize that TxDOT does have a policy that guides our public involvement. But this is it, that we commit to purposefully involve the public in planning and project implementation by providing for early, continuous, transparent, and effective access to information and our decision-making processes, and that we will regularly update those public involvement methods to include best practices and incorporate a range of strategies to encourage broad participation that is really reflective of the needs of our state. Our policy serves as a constant guidepost to what we do every day. And I'll be highlighting some of our most recent innovations and best practices and some of our virtual public involvement strategies during what became the biggest challenge so far for, not just to maintain our public involvement, but to grow our public participation during a global pandemic. I'm really proud to say that when other DOTs across the country were slowing down or stopping their public involvement efforts, that we continued full steam ahead by adapting, growing, and expanding our public involvement efforts. Next slide. So who are we exactly before we get into talking about some of those successes? So we were created to assist TxDOT divisions and districts in developing engagement strategies and implementing public involvement activities through all phases of project and program development, from the very earliest feasibility studies all the way through construction. And we do a lot of things for districts and divisions. The biggest is providing that oversight and guidance. But we also assist with planning and execution of public involvement efforts, writing and reviewing public involvement plans and materials, looking always at those innovative tools and techniques, helping out with planning of in-person and virtual public meetings and hearings, writing and reviewing all those public meeting presentations. And we have trained facilitators on my team. So we facilitate stakeholder meetings, working group meetings, those kinds of things. Next slide. So let's talk a little bit about this last year and a half. So COVID obviously led to huge changes in the way we do public involvement permanently. We pressed on. My section, my team was simply amazing at pivoting and adapting overnight to turn multiple public meetings into virtual experiences to keep our projects moving forward. We worked very closely with our partners in the environmental division to ensure that we were meeting federal highways requirements, again, while keeping our projects moving forward. So some interesting stats that we'd like to share. We had historic levels of attendance for virtual public involvement in 2020 and still continuing in 2021. In 2019, the average attendance per meeting was about 64 people. In 2020, it was over 200. This includes the virtual views of our virtual meetings and hearings. We had more than 8,800 comments received from virtual events from March 2020 to March 2021. And one particular exciting thing that happened was the Rural Transportation Improvement Program, which is typically very low attendance, and in the past had an average of about 8 people per meeting. In 2020, it was 171 views per meeting. So big leaps in participation going virtual. Next slide. We saw a dramatic increase in participation, and overall from some detailed virtual summary reporting that we had done, we're showing about a 30% increase in public participation when we had to go virtual versus in-person meetings. More than 47,000 people participated in our events, whereas in 2018 and 2019, we hovered around 19,000 people. We had more than 8,000 interactive room views and over 39,000 pre-recorded video views during that same period of time. Next slide. So, back one. So we continued to expand our engagement methods and to promote and conduct our virtual public meetings and hearings. As always, we strive to ensure the public is able to participate the same way that they could in an in-person event. And we know that virtual public involvement is here to stay. Some of the many things you see up on the screen that we used, of course, social media. We piloted Nextdoor, which we're still investigating as an agency about using moving forward. A lot of WebEx, MS Teams, YouTube, pre-recorded videos to post meetings and hearings. And a little bit later this fall, we're excited, we're going to be premiering 2 new online engagement tools for our toolbox that I think are going to add some additional robust items for us to continue raising the bar on our public involvement. We've done virtual rooms where we had interactive hosts who were speaking in English and Spanish and guiding people through a virtual room to view all the meeting boards and materials. The San Antonio district provided an ASL interpreter for a project to ensure that all members of that community could participate. Still actively using our MetroQuest online engagement tool and getting a lot of feedback on those online surveys. And then of course, always the traditional methods of letting people know what we're doing, billboards, postcards, door hangers, letters, all of those methods as well. Next slide. So what's next for us? In addition to providing support to the 25 districts and divisions, we implement a lot of other public involvement initiatives and training. We have an OPI 100, which is a basic introduction to public involvement class, very well attended by staff and consultants. We're going to be rolling out our OPI 200 more advanced class, which focuses on more proactive early planning for public involvement, way early in the scoping phase. We're going to be creating some on-demand videos so that if folks can't attend a full day class, either virtually or in person, that we'll be able to provide some training with on-demand videos. We're also developing a general public involvement toolkit that gives districts who just want a library of materials already created for them, and then they can customize them based on their needs. Very excited to be working on an underrepresented outreach initiative. You know, how do we reach, talk to, educate, inform, and invite those underrepresented populations that we're impacting with our projects into our decision-making process? So we're working on with a consultant on a toolkit and guidance for us to better reach those populations. We have quarterly newsletters. If you're interested, put your email in the chat and we'd be happy to add you to our list. Every newsletter, we try to showcase some innovative ideas and tactics that are happening around the state. We're also right now one of 5 DOTs that are piloting a measurement tool. Public involvement has typically been very difficult to measure because it's so subjective. So we're part of a 5 DOT TRB pilot project right now, testing out this tool to determine if it's something that will benefit the department as we move forward. And then we're also very involved with a community of practice. Brian Barth is our executive sponsor, trying to look at ways that we can have better communication statewide, reduce inefficiencies and redundancies, and share best practices so that we're all moving more efficiently and finding those innovations where we can. Next slide. So this is a pretty small map, but this is my team. I have a team of 6 outstanding staff who work hard every day to promote the department and to share and to guide districts and divisions with innovative best practices on public involvement. We'd love to share and learn about new tools that your group is using. Knowing that, you know, every circumstance is different and has to be customized to get that proper recipe of strategies and methods and applications to ensure those positive and successful public involvement outcomes. So I'm happy to share, you know, or answer any questions. I also have Julie Bobian, who is our public involvement team lead, on the line with me as well, in case there are any questions that we can answer. But we were excited to be invited and appreciate y'all having us today.
Thank you so much, Susan. It's great to hear the work you've been doing to try to get the word out about TxSTIC projects. I know that public involvement can be challenging, and getting the right people in the room is rewarding, because then you feel like it's all for a purpose and you've done a good job, right? It's always tough when you have a public hearing and maybe 5 people show up. So that's always disheartening. So it's good to know that we found a way to engage more people. That's exciting. Does anybody? Oh, go ahead.
I was just gonna say, yeah, we were very pleased, surprised, but very pleased that we had such an increase in participation by going virtual. Knowing that we still have to reach those populations who may not have access to, you know, to good internet, but that we're definitely moving in the right direction.
That's wonderful. Did anyone have any questions for Susan?
I do.
Oh, go ahead. Yay, Darren.
So this is fascinating to me. So Susan, you hopefully heard this morning, a lot of our focus is on innovation and research. And one, I guess I'd ask, in some of these public involvement, they may be, the audience may be completely focused on a given project, but do they ever ask questions regarding that, like the future, or, and if so, then I would really be interested in the potential for whether some of these groups that you're engaging might be a potential area for us to bring some of these STIC topics and some of the connected and autonomous vehicle stuff to a public, through y'all as a public involvement kind of effort as well.
Questions come up that are not project related all the time with the different groups, and we would be happy to partner and share in any circumstance. We do a lot of advisory committees, a lot of working groups that have more tailored and more customized tasks before them. That might be a great opportunity for this group to get in front of. So I would love to have further conversations, Darren.
Great.
I definitely appreciate that. I've always wondered how we could bring this to the public in a way. So thank you for coming today, and thank you for presenting that fantastic topic.
Thanks, Shelley.
Yeah, sure. And if anyone has any questions, you can go ahead and type them or reach out to us, and we'll make sure you get in touch with Susan. Next on the agenda. I'm not sure where that ringing is coming from. I don't think it's me. Okay.
Sorry, Shelley, that was me.
Oh, okay. Well, good. We can hear you well. We know that microphone's working. So now Ben from Dallas, he's with TTI, and he's going to talk to us about traffic incident management. I'm looking forward to what Min has to say. And then after Min, we have Jason Crawford, also with TTI out of Arlington, and he's going to continue the conversation. So with that, go ahead, Min. Feel free to get started as soon as you get up and
Sure. Thank you. Apologize, I'm not able to see right now, so I'm just going to have to
I know,
go
it's
by.
challenging. Yeah.
I wasn't able to get into Zoom.
You are on, let's see, we have it on, I can see a master cover. Looks like it's still in, but we can see the slide for Waze and the I-30 Waze.
Oh. Okay, are we going with that one first or the other one?
Min, this is Erin. Sorry, I can do either one. Just let me know which one you want to go with first, and I'll jump into that one.
Okay, let's go ahead and go into the incident impact visualization tool and just stick to the agenda as close as possible.
Got it.
Thank you, Erin.
Okay, there we are. You're welcome.
Thank you. Okay, so I'm Min Lee with I'm an associate research engineer with TTI out of the Dallas office, and I'll be presenting today two things. First one is a visualization tool that we've developed for the Dallas and Fort Worth district. Go ahead and go to the next slide. A little bit of background. All of us are familiar with some of the sources of congestion that's out there on our highways, but there's estimates that half of that congestion is really due to non-recurring events. And some of those causes of those non-recurring events, main ones are incidents, work zones, and weather, based on some of the studies that have been done out there. This is important because some of these are, they significantly impact the transportation network by reducing the capacity and the reliability. And so it's important for us to try to minimize that as much as possible through some of the tools that we have available. Go ahead and go to the next slide. So we developed about a year and a half ago or so, developed a tool that allows TxSTIC, using a lot of their data, to visualize some of the impacts, particularly on freeways, impacts of certain incidents and crashes and they can use it for things such as their monthly fatal crash reviews or for their TIM meetings that they have on a regular basis, sort of a post-mortem analysis of some of the major incidents or some of the hotspots that they have in the network. Some of the features of the tool is it's a web-based tool, so you can access it from anywhere you have internet access. It is a powerful tool to query some of the TMC incident data that's in the metro areas, as well as the CRIS crashes, and you can do sort of a side-by-side comparison. It also has a really neat feature that we call the playback mode, and it has two flavors. One is you can play back the impacts in terms of the incident and the CRIS events versus looking at the three different measures that we have, speed, volume, and the VC ratio, which I'll touch on later. It also shows secondary incidents. It shows whatever's in the incident database, and that's based on what the operators record in the different TMCs. Also, we have a feature that calculates the total delay associated with these incidents. It's an estimate, of course. And then we also have a neat feature where we automatically pull data, weather data, from an API, a third party, and we associate with that with the different incidents. So go ahead and go to the next slide. So this is the heart of the tool is really a lot of the ITS sensor data that's out there at that the TMC operates and manages. Here you see it for both Fort Worth and Dallas District. Go ahead and go to the next slide. And so the data sources is everything except for the weather is from TxSTIC existing systems, such as I mentioned before, the ITS sensors, the incident data, which is what the operators on the floor enter in every day as they monitor the freeways. The CRIS data is, everybody's familiar with CRIS data, and you can see that all of this it generates quite a bit of data that we can actually utilize. And then the weather data, we actually use an API to pull from a third party called Dark Sky, and I'll get into that in a little bit. Go ahead and go to the next slide. The intended users of the tool is anywhere from the managers down to the operators, and you can use it for, it's not in real time, but it is for basically post-analysis of incidents and crashes to see those impacts so that you can do some planning or some analysis. And you can use it for operations as well as maintenance. And then, like I mentioned before, you can use it as a comparison between TMC incidents and then CRIS crashes. Of course, TMC incidents have more than just crashes. It also has, for example, stalled vehicles, debris, those types of incidents as well that's not captured in the crash data. Go ahead and go to the next slide. This is a screenshot of both the Fort Worth and on the Dallas side. That's what the tool looks like. I'm not going to be able to do a demo for you because I couldn't connect, but if we had time and I was able to show you my screen, I would show you a demo of the tool, what it looks like. Go ahead and go to the next slide. Just wanted to get into some of the mechanics of the tool. One of the features I mentioned was a playback mode, and for that feature, in order for it to show you visually the impacts, such as like the cues as they develop and then as they dissipate due to the incidents, we had to make some adjustments. So, for example, under the TMC incidents, it has a lot of timestamps in it, which is great. But for the start time, we only have the detected timestamp is what we have from the data. So we assume about a 10-minute that the actual incident occurred about 10 minutes prior to that detected time. So that's what we do based on some research that we've done in other areas. That's what we determined was appropriate. For the end time, typically we use the close time, but then we also go ahead and we add another 20 minutes because what we've seen is that the queue takes a while to dissipate. The operator closes the event, but it takes a while for the conditions to return back to normal. For the CRIS data, for any of you that have worked with the CRIS data, we know that it only has one timestamp, and that's just the crash time. So for that, we treat it like we do in the TMC data in terms of the start time. We subtract out 10 minutes assuming that it actually occurred right before the time that's recorded. But for the end time, what we had to do was go ahead and go to the next slide. And so what we did was a little analysis. Since we don't have exactly the end time for the CRIS crashes, we had to make certain assumptions. But what we did was we actually matched up, as you can see there, about 70 CRIS crashes along with the corresponding TMC event. And then we looked at some of the data fields that were available. What we found was we needed to combine several variables such as crash severity, peak period, day of the week, in order to determine what's an appropriate end time for the CRIS crashes. And you can see there in that table, for example, if it was a non-incapacitated crash and it occurred on a weekday, then typically we assume 1 hour, and that's based on the corresponding event that we found in the TMC data. And then for the weekend, typically it's shorter because there's less traffic, so it's about 20 minutes shorter. So these are the times that we are adding on to the crash time in the CRIS data that we are assuming for the end time. And that comes into play later, as you'll see in one of our other features. But again, this is all the configuration that's needed for that playback mode in order for it to know when to start and when to stop. Okay, go ahead and go to the next slide. So one of the components of the visual tool is to show you also the different phases that the incident goes through according to the diagram on the right. So what we did was we color-coded the icons to change colors when it goes into a different phase. And as you can note there, we don't have all the timestamps. We don't have, for example, T0, T3, T4. But with the ones that we do have that's available in the data, we go ahead and we represent that in the tool. For the last timestamp, T7, which is when the roadway returns to normal conditions, we actually have two versions of that. We have T7A, which is when the actual delay cleared. If that's available, if the operator actually entered that time, then that's what we use. But most often we find that it's not there, and we just typically have a close time. And sometimes they're the same. So we typically end up using the close timestamp. Go ahead and go to the next slide. These are the three different measures. Typically we use the speed measure that's shown there on the left side. And we just have 5 different thresholds that we show different colors. We also have volume, and these are link volumes, and because we're using the ITS sensor data, that's one of the data points that it captures. And this is on a 5-minute interval, every 5 minutes. But what we've also just recently implemented was a volume to capacity ratio to get more of an indication of relative congestion, volume relative to the number of lanes, essentially. And that's what we have found to be a better measure than the volume to look at when you're looking at the different time of day features. Go ahead and go to the next slide. The weather data, I mentioned the weather data. That is actually based on location and time. We use an API to pull the data from dark sky, and it shows the temperature conditions, roadway conditions, and atmospheric conditions, precipitation if there is any, visibility. And if there is an intensity in terms of the precipitation, it's greater than 0, then we go ahead and we include that. And you can see sort of a snapshot of that on the upper right corner. That shows you the data that's available with that particular incident. And it happens on the fly. As you're using the tool, you can click on an icon on the incident itself. It'll display some of the main information, but once you click on the playback mode and you start the playback mode, then the weather data appears that's associated with that. And it changes every 5 minutes, every interval, if there is new data. The other thing that we show is secondary incidents. Again, this is recorded by the operators. And if it is a secondary, if it's deemed to be a secondary incident, then it just, for our purposes, we just put a small S in the upper left corner of the icon to show that. Go ahead and go to the next slide. This one is the new feature that we just also implemented. It's the total delay. So we calculate or we estimate the delay associated with an incident. Obviously, there could be other factors involved. But what we do is we actually calculate it by basically establishing a congestion threshold, if you will. In this case, we're using 60% of the free flow speed of the link. And so whenever we check the current 5-minute interval, the speed on that link, we compare it to that threshold. If it's less than that, then we deem it to be that it's congested. So there's a queue there. We're basically defining a queue, and we calculate the delay on that link that's associated with it, and that's going to be the difference between the current speed. I'm sorry, the travel time at the current speed versus the travel time historically. Then we take that and we multiply it by the volume on the links that are within that queue to get the total delay, and then we display that as part of the statistics in the tool. So we're estimating a delay associated with each incident. Okay, that's one of the new features. Go ahead and go to the next slide. So I wanted to show you 2 examples. I guess I'm glad that I have some screenshots in here because I won't be able to show it to you actually in the tool. But in the Fort Worth district, they have monthly meetings with their operators, and they usually go over like hotspots or some of the major incidents as a post review. And this was one of them where they used our tool to kind of show the impact of that incident. This was on September 25th. It was a Friday afternoon. The graphic on the left sort of shows you the timeline of when it was detected to the time that it was closed. You can see there it shows it's about 56 minutes, just under an hour. But in reality, if you look at the screenshots on the right, those are just snapshots of the queue that's showing. The incident is shown by the star, and if you look upstream of the star, so in other words, south of the star, you can see that the northbound link starts to show some red at about 2:20, and it doesn't turn green again until about 2:55, which is well after the 2:17 timestamp where the event was closed. So it takes a while for the queue to. And this is very normal in what we see in a lot of the incidents. Go ahead and go to the next slide. Then I was going to show you a major incident in the Dallas area, which was actually in August on US 75. Some of you may be familiar with this incident. It was a pretty major incident on US 75 where a truck actually hit the median, went through it, turned over, and then caught on fire. It basically shut down the freeway in both directions, and it lasted for a good portion of the day. Unfortunately, I didn't have enough screen room here to show you some of the snapshots, but in the tool I could show you what it looked like. But our tool now has the ability to estimate the delay that's associated with that, and I think this one here, I forgot how many hours it lasted, but basically you multiply that by the volume and how long the queue is, then it was, I forgot what the exact number is. It's well over, I believe it was over probably around 100. I don't remember how many hours actually. I'll have to check into that. But it was significant, as you can imagine. So that is the reason why we were developing that feature, so that we can give more of a I guess quantitative measure in these meetings when you're preparing for either a fatal crash review or a major incident review, a TIM meeting. You can tell them, okay, not only did it cause a 5-mile backup, but it also caused this much delay to traffic. So go ahead and go to the next slide. Are you on the possible incident or possible enhancement slide?
This one is titled Incident Impact Visualization Tool Possible Enhancements.
Right. Okay. So these were some of the possible enhancements that we're considering, and I don't need to go through them all, but just in a nutshell, basically, we're going to look at developing more of that return to normal estimate, because right now we know that a lot of the operators at the TMCs are just entering in well, when they close out the event, it's supposed to be when things return back to normal, but that doesn't always happen, as I showed in the example earlier, that the queue is still there, and it's kind of hard for an operator to determine, especially within if you think about the recurring congestion, which is like the peak periods, very hard for them to know when if that's just part of the normal traffic during that time versus if it's non-recurring. So one of the things that we can do with this tool is, since we're looking back at historical data, we can determine more accurately that return to normal feature. And then we're looking at a couple of other aspects as far as enhancing the tool. Go ahead and go to the next slide. That's it. This is the team that we're working on the tool. I'd be happy to either answer any questions, or I don't know if we're holding them off until the end. Hello?
We can take questions on this one and then go to your next presentation if you want to do that.
Okay, sure. If there are any questions, I'd be happy to go over them.
Hey man, this is Jason. David McDonald wrote a question. If you had current data flowing to the TMC, say from an agency's CAD system, how would that impact your tool?
Yeah, so great question, David. That would be another data source that we could use. Perhaps the CAD data may have some other factors that we haven't been able to collect as part, well, it's not part of our data stream, that's not weather, or if it's not noted in the incident data, then perhaps that would help explain what's going on. It also may help in terms of the maybe the position, the location, the exact location, because from the incident data, that's based on what the operators put in, and my understanding is the operators are tying each incident to the nearest cross street as opposed to the exact location. So, but that's where you can actually look at the CRIS crash data as well, and the CRIS crash data is by coordinates. And so that one would probably be more accurate, assuming that there's a corresponding crash event in the CRIS data. So does that answer that, David? Okay, if there's nothing else, then I'd be happy to move on to the next one if that's.
Okay, I have you on the intro slide of the Waze presentation now then.
Okay, let me
All right.
switch gears here. Very good. The other thing that I wanted to talk to you about was some of the crowdsourced data that we're doing. This ties into what Jason Crawford is going to present next. We are part of a pilot project on the I-30 corridor between Dallas and Fort Worth. We are, as you can see there in that opening slide, the partners, we're one of 4 different partners on this integration pilot project. Go ahead and go to the next slide for some of the background. This project is part of a larger project called the Texas Connected Freight Corridor, which some of you may be involved in, where it's building a connected vehicle environment for the Texas Triangle, the 3 red highways that you see there on the right, in order to support the safety and the mobility applications of that project. The Waze 911 integration pilot complements it. It's actually at the northern end of that Texas Triangle, connecting Fort Worth and Dallas along the I-30 by providing more data specifically with respect to traffic incident management and response. Go ahead and go to the next slide. The main goals of the project is to integrate Waze data in the I-30 911 centers, or the public safety answering points, the PSAPs, to help them improve situational awareness of the roadway incidents and reduce emergency response times, and then, which in turn will hopefully reduce secondary crashes. Some of the main research questions are, is the Waze data or the Waze traffic incidents, is it detected sooner than what it is traditionally in the 911 centers, the PSAPs? And are they more accurate positionally than the 911 center? Go ahead and go to the next slide. So this screenshot here just shows you sort of the power of crowdsourced data, because there's a lot of, I'm sure all of us are familiar at least a little bit with Waze and may have used it with Waze. So it's more than just a navigational app. It's widely used to report incidents. And as you can see here in the DFW area, on a daily basis, you can see in the 12-county area that there's about 15,000 incidents and 15,000 traffic jams reported on a daily basis. So that's a lot of data that you can utilize and leverage to inform the 911 centers. Go ahead and go to the next slide. This slide here is showing the different ways that 911 centers either get some of their data and some of the possible new ways that are possible new data points that the Waze feed can provide them some more information. So when we were talking to the different PSAPs as part of this project, we were telling them essentially that right now this is what you're doing in that 911 column, and what the Waze can do is offer you this much more information in addition to what you're doing. For example, one of the big things that we talked about a lot is the on-scene verification, where right now they are relying on either other people calling in and telling them, but that doesn't happen as often as in the ways they'd expect, especially in a very urban area. You're getting a lot of people that are using it, and they verify the incidents that are out there. So those are those thumbs up or thumbs down indications that is in Waze. So that helps also in terms of incident location, that last row there. With a 911 call, traditionally you have to rely on the person to describe accurately where they are, or where the actual incident occurred in case they've already left it. Whereas in the Waze data, it's automatically giving you GPS coordinates as you report that incident. So that's one of the benefits of that. Go ahead and go to the next slide. Who is using Waze? Well, worldwide, there's over 130 million monthly active users. And within the United States, about 30 million of them are, and that was back in 2018. Waze also has a program called Waze for Cities, formerly known as the Connected Citizens Program. Perhaps some of you have used it, where it's basically set up to be an exchange between Waze and municipalities so that they can share information. Nationally, 17 or more DOTs are using it, specifically in the TMCs. And then for our project, we were investigating who's using it in the DFW area. And what we found that is for TxSTIC is actually Dallas TMC is piloting it right now. Fort Worth is still using just the website, but Dallas is actually piloting it right now. They're still in the early stages of that. The MPO NCT 911 actually uses it for 42 PSAPs. Mostly they're in the rural areas of the metro area, and some of the smaller, as well as some of the smaller municipalities. So they support those 42, and they're all using it in terms of the feed that NCT 911 set up. The city of Frisco is using it. I don't know if Brian Moan is on this call. I know he's presented before to this committee, but they are active users, and they use it both at the PSAP and at the TMC. For our I-30 corridor, what we have found was most of the cities that we're dealing with, they're using it just in the TMCs. There is a city that uses the Waze feature through the county, but that's on an as-needed basis, so it's not very widely used in the PSAPs yet. Go ahead and go to the next slide. This map here just shows you the corridor and the different agencies that we're working with and their general limits in terms of responding to the different events. Dallas County Sheriff actually, for the Dallas portion of it, on the east end, Dallas County Sheriff manages and enforces actually the managed lane portion of that I-30 corridor. So that's an interesting section. So they're also involved in this project. Go ahead and go to the next slide. So what we're doing as part of this project is we are actually developing, well, we defined 3 different levels of integration. And when we went out and talked to the PSAPs to see where they're at and what they would want to have ultimately, just for simplification, we kind of termed the low, medium, and high in terms of how you see it here. The low one, we're actually developing a web-based prototype tool that will help the PSAPs to visualize the Waze data. Looking at just, you can see some of the features there that are bulleted. One of the things that we're going to try to look at also is see if we can cluster or aggregate or group some of the Waze events, because there can be a lot along the corridor, and just to see if that adds an extra value to the PSAPs, to see if they can use it to identify quicker the incidents or verify the information. That's the low level integration at a very basic level that they can start with. Then the next level is the medium, where we can they can contract with a third-party cloud-based mapping vendor that will provide that service, where it integrates the Waze data with 911 calls, particularly from the mobile devices. And they also have some features related to that gives them more higher precision updates in terms of the location with Google and with Apple phones. And then the full integration is the high level, and that's where they integrate the Waze data directly into the PSAP software. Go ahead and go to the next slide. Sure, I've got this here because I'm looking at my PowerPoint presentation here. These are the main findings from our interviews that we had with those PSAPs. Right now, they're generally not using Waze, as I mentioned before, but they think it can help, particularly in locating the incidents better, to verify the incidents, and then also to identify some of them sooner. They still think that there are a lot of the people that are calling in, so they're getting it, they think, at the same time, if not sooner. So, but they think that it's possible. Particularly, what we've discussed was perhaps what they will see now is incidents of different types, maybe of like either stalled vehicles or debris or something like that. Now they'll see that people don't traditionally call into the 911 center. So they may see those sooner and get those up there. PSAPs want the high level of integration ultimately, but a lot of them need to work with their different CAD vendors that they have. There's probably about 3 or 4 different ones along the corridor that they need to work with. One of the things that they said is that they really don't prefer to have another app that's outside of their CAD system, because that means that it'll be less likely to be looked at, especially during spikes in their emergency events. Because right now, a lot of their operators or call takers are already looking at multiple screens. So they really, it would be very challenging for them to use it during those spikes. But what we told them is that those 3 different levels of integration is just meant to be, they can move from one to the other. That's just, the idea was just to get them started in looking at the data and getting the data and then looking at it and potentially using it. Some of the TMCs are providing incidents and roadway closures already to Waze, is what we found. But again, that's just in the TMC. We found that the PSAPs needed some more eyes on the road, per se. So they needed some way of looking or actually connecting to the CCTV feeds that TxSTIC has set up for most of their corridors. And that would help them in terms of, at least for those corridors, to have eyes. And so they know when, for example, when roadways are shut down or when roadways are closed and opened back up. Right now, they're just relying on internal city forces to radio that information back to them. Go ahead, go to the next slide. And then part of our project includes an evaluation. So we're working closely with CTR. They're doing that part of that task of the project, and we've discussed some about 4 different components of that analysis that we're going to do. The first one here is comparing the different times, the reported time between Waze and the PSAP call time. So that's one of the things that we'll be looking at. Go ahead and go to the next slide. Then we're going to be looking at the accuracy in terms of positionally where it is. One of the ways that we're going to do that is by looking at sort of a weighted average based on the location of the WAYS reports versus the weighted average of the PSAPs, assuming that they get multiple ones for the same event. And then the other version is the next slide, where they'll be looking at the, again, just the position in terms of the location of the coordinates that are given by the WAYS event versus the PSAP events. Go ahead and go to the next slide. Then we'll be looking at the different incident types, and this is just a quick overview of all the different incident types. We'll break them down by the either the WAYS or PSAP reported incident type, and then use that to assess the efficacy of the WAYS data. And then lastly, go to the next slide. We'll be looking at the hotspot analysis in terms of trying to identify if there's any geographic or jurisdictional patterns there, so that the PSAPs can be more aware. And we'll be looking at that by different things such as, incident type, time of day, their area that they are responsible for, things of that nature. Okay, and the last slide is showing our schedule. Right now, we just started this in late March. Really, we started earnestly in April. So we are still in the beginning of the second task, where we're developing this prototype, and then we're going to provide assistance to the PSAPs over the next year or so to implement that, and then to start get them to use it. And then we're going to start also our evaluation as part of that. We're already starting the framework of the evaluation right now with CTR, as I mentioned, and we'll continue that throughout the rest of the pilot. And then we're collecting about, probably about at least 3 to 6 months worth of data to do that analysis. That's all I had. Are there any questions on that?
Yes, there were a few questions, Min. Darren, did you want to elaborate on yours?
That was just a small technical question, because I was fascinated about the geolocation. And I've always wondered if and I don't know if this came up in your discussions. When does WAYS assign the GPS coordinate? When you first hit the hazard button, or when you finish filling out picking what the hazard is and pushing send?
Yeah, I believe it's when they actually submit it, when they hit send. But we'd have to look into that. We haven't looked into that level of detail. We do know that one of the other things that we discovered as part of this is the feed that we have through the center through the CCP program is on a 2-minute interval. And we were a little surprised by that. But what we found was within the feed, we actually have a timestamp of when the event was published. So, they just group them by every 2 minutes and release the information. So we're looking into that. So we'll have that timestamp, and I'm assuming that timestamp is when they actually hit send, Darren, but I'm not sure. I'd have to investigate that a little bit more.
And Darren, to add on Men's comment there, I have heard that when you hit the kind of event button, that's when it takes the GPS and maybe the timestamp and allows you to fill it out, but it also allows you to complete that many minutes down the road. So I think there's still some unknowns with WAYS on that we'll work through on this.
Right.
Thanks.
Min, I had one more question. So I just was wondering, who are you doing the work with? Is that, it's not a TxSTIC project, right?
It is a TxSTIC project. So at the very beginning, I think I said that this is part of a larger project called the Texas Connected Freight Corridor Project.
Yes. Okay,
Jimin Ma is the project manager for it out of TRF.
Right.
And so, and NCT COG is involved because it's in their back door, and we are one of 3 sub projects along the I-30 corridor. We're just one of the 3, and so that's the reason why NCT COG is involved.
Okay, yeah, I saw Natalie's comment and was going to mention that as well. Thank you for your presentations. That's very interesting
Sure.
Information. Thank you. And
Thank you.
Jason, were you going to continue?
Yeah, I'll pick up from here and hopefully it says I can't share my screen while another participant is sharing.
Okay, Aaron, I'll let you sort that out.
And
Okay, you should have the ability now.
all right, let me see here. Okay, hopefully all is working well and you guys can see my screen.
Yes, we can see it.
Okay, so I'm talking to you today about effort that we've been working with the TxSTIC Fort Worth District on, and it's bringing active 911 information into the Traffic Management Center. The objective is to improve the time it takes for the Traffic Management Center to identify, verify, then assess and respond, as shown here with the standard federal highway incident timeline. This effort was really born out of when the Fort Worth District was reconstituting its traffic management teams with first responders. That in that initial meeting, Fort Worth District staff were asking the first responders, when you get to a scene, please call the Traffic Management Center and let us know what's going on. And through some discussions after that meeting, and just knowing that the first responders' first duty when they're on the scene is to control and to respond to what's happening, and that maybe asking them to call the Traffic Management Center would not be a very reliable method. And so we were talking about this alternate that I'm going to present on today. But it also, as you see the sub bullets here, would allow TxDOT, if there was a hazardous material spill and the district was needed to muster support for some traffic control, that would shorten that response time. And also for just the Traffic Management Center, hopefully shortening the response time to update dynamic message signs on the roadway about the conditions ahead. And so one of the reasons why we're doing it, and you see on the left side is an ITS sensor map of Tarrant County, and there's a great deal of sensors out on our access controlled facilities, but you will see that there are some gaps in distance, so that the density of the sensors isn't that great. The sensors work really well when traffic slows and it crosses a sensor location, but that queuing can take time to occur. So if we're just relying on the sensors to detect the queue, minutes can go by before the queued traffic starts to show up on a sensor that traffic is slow. The other issue is with the CCTV cameras, which are full pan view tilt. It's only as good as what the camera is looking at. So the picture on the right is meant to be an analogy. When you're looking through the camera, you don't always know what's back on the other side. So in this case, I hope that the photographer did not become lunch for that grizzly bear. And what we're trying to do is work with 911 centers in Tarrant County to send us their information on access controlled facilities. So we're not talking about state maintained arterial routes going through a city, FM routes, or state highways that are primarily arterials, but just our controlled access facilities. And within that, we're also asking the 911 centers to send us a subset of call types related to traffic, such as crashes, whether there's a fatality, which would be a more lengthy delay because of the investigation that would be required, major minor accidents that are defined by the 911 center systems, if there are overturned vehicles, hazardous material spills. And then not every 911 system has it, but some do, some don't. Grass fires, or what typically happens where the west begins in Fort Worth, we get loose livestock. So those typically have impact events. One of the things that we're asking for is for the CAD systems to send us their data to a secure FTP site in the cloud that then we can display on a map. And by asking them to push their information to us, they remain in control of their CAD system in terms of what information and that frequency. And so we're able to avoid some of the criminal justice information system worries about us getting access into their system and personal identifiable information that they don't want us to have. Going into their system is a tougher issue. I know David understands that from meetings that we've been in, but it's an easier ask to get them to send the information to us. And so as we're still working through this is just a sample in the city of Arlington on the controlled access facilities of them being able to identify the events. And we'll be working with the Fort Worth district on the display interface so that things that are high impact events such as hazardous material, fatalities, those incidents get marked with icons that are separate and unique than ongoing events that may be waiting to be cleared. We want to make sure to pop those high events up to the TMC operators. It's a real short presentation about what we're doing. I'd be happy to answer any questions anyone has.
Does anyone have any questions about that project? It's sort of a pilot project because it is that Fort Worth area that he was talking about. But David, did you want to follow up anything or talk about that at all?
This is Brian. I have a question when it's okay.
Sure, go ahead, Brian.
I guess Jason, are on that information that they're going to push to you guys, what does that consist of? Is it simply that an event has occurred, or you may be working towards establishing if the dispatch is noting, when the roadway closed or what lanes were closed, or if they're tracking the tow truck was called?
Yeah, so answer to your question is we are asking for the status of the call, whether it's responding on scene or if it's cleared. Maybe some of the subsets, if a tow truck was called, that may not be what gets captured. But we do have a set of information where we're asking them to send to us their event ID, if they have an ID related to the crash number, which would be put on the CRIS form, that we can track that, the lat long, the time of the event, any status update, and then the call type is kind of that subset that we're looking for to be able to display.
Gotcha. Yeah, if you were able to get some of those other things, I think it would help the region and things Natalie's doing, right, when they're trying to get the cities to report that incident timeline. If the dispatch or the PSAPs can get in the process of marking those time points and be able to share that so we can all actually track those measures and on the TIM teams, find where the holes are and areas for improvement.
Yeah, no, agreed on that. And really, I guess that gets boiled down to what the status of the call is for each one of the systems. So if they're able to give us that detail in the call, then we should be receiving it. And I'll say too, what we're asking each one of the CAD 911 systems to do is to send us this information on 2-minute intervals. So it still kind of matches up a little bit with what Min's doing with the Waze. We're not sure if it would need to be any sooner than 2 minutes, but as we're doing this initial pass, that's kind of what the ask is to get information on 2-minute intervals.
And just a clarification on that, Jason?
Yep.
Hello?
Go ahead, man.
That's just for what we're getting from the PSAPs, that would be just on the freeways, right? And I guess Brian would be more interested on the city roadways.
Yeah, again, what we're doing through this tool is just on the controlled access facilities that the district traffic management centers are monitoring. So, it excludes FM 157 through Arlington for, say, Collins Street, or Division Street running east-west, which is State Highway 180, because those are arterials. Now, that's at this point. If we wanted to, at some point, we could work to expand that. But trying to cater to what the TMC is reviewing and responding to, it's those controlled access facilities.
Yeah, I would think, Min, to your point, at least this is the starting point where then maybe this gets done, stood up, and a process worked out, and then the PSAPs and their local TMCs can start to then work together, and they can be getting just their city TMC and their streets to start to do the same thing if they can start to see the value that comes here, if they're not already doing it.
Yeah. Right. And Aaron, if you don't mind, I'll read the question from James. Is someone going to be actively choosing which events are pushed, or will there be established filters and automation? And the answer is established filters and automation. So the first filter is a geofence, if you want to call it, on the controlled access facilities. And then the second is from the call types in the CAD system that will identify things there. For instance, there could be just a general investigation call type that is out on an access controlled facility, but it may not be anything that would really change traffic or influence traffic. There can be things as well as on a break or kind of finishing up paperwork. So we're going through with each CAD system or each city and working with them to filter what those call types are. And then, as I said, for instance, grass fire is something that's in the Fort Worth CAD system, but it's not in the Arlington CAD system. So there'll be a little bit of if we can or need to, a table of equals with some of those call types if they're slightly different, translating between one CAD system to another to have a consistent display on this interface. I'd be happy to answer any other questions that you have.
Okay.
Hey, Jason, this is Kurt Fodder.
Hey, Kirk.
Federal Highway. I had a question. During an extreme weather event like black ice or something on the road, would this system be able to divert traffic away from those routes that are impacted by ice or sleet conditions where there could be hazardous driving?
Mm-hmm. So this system, no, because this system is taking information from the 911 systems and displaying it to the traffic management center. But if the traffic management center were to begin receiving multiple reports of 911 calls in a corridor, they might be able to investigate and then affect a change on the DMS boards upstream of that location. But it could also be used in terms of other response that TxDOT might have. But this system in and of itself, of what I'm describing, would not do anything with rerouting. It would be decisions made in the traffic management center.
But the folks in the traffic management center could, I guess, theoretically reroute the traffic around that incident area where you have hazardous conditions.
They could put up advisories on the dynamic message boards.
Okay.
But it still may take some, if we needed to do something with law enforcement in the field or TxDOT forces in the field to put up traffic control to, say, close an entrance to something or to direct traffic off. You could put the advisory up, but sometimes people, they don't read the signs.
Yeah. Well, thank you.
Sure.
Hey, Jason, this is David McDonald. Can you hear me?
Yes, sir.
question for you. So as Kurt just kind of elaborated on and asked about, I know that the CAD integration would give us a lot of the TIM timeline information that we're looking for that we're currently missing. But would we also get the information, say if law enforcement got out there and said, we're shutting down the roadway and all traffic must exit wherever? As that information is put into the CAD as an update in that call, would that information flow to the TMC as well?
And you might know some of this more than I do, but when I've talked to some of the systems, those would be in notes associated with the call. And it may not be a field per se that we would be able to see, but we could ask to get notes where there's been some hesitancy on that. And this is just some experience in Arlington where we had an armed, I want to call it hostage, but it was a individual in a stolen 18-wheeler that had a weapon, and Arlington was using the notes to share information about what was going on in the incident. And in that case, that's something that we don't want to have, because again, I think it kind of crosses that CGIS barrier, but we could certainly ask and see what we could add. The way I look at it is once we can get these queries in their system and received by us on a frequent basis, to go modify the query is a lot less effort than what we're doing right now with getting them to establish the query and send the data. So okay. So for your question, if there's something in there about, closing a highway at a location, sending an exit, then maybe that could be added. It may just take some discussions with each one of the systems to find out how we do that.
Okay.
And then let's see, looking. Brian, I guess you're making a statement in the chat about if the jurisdiction decides to close a facility, that could go from the PSAP to Waze, and then the users would at least get that on their app. And so, yeah, that's, Waze is monitoring that traffic, and once it stacks up, queues up, it's looking for those alternate routes.
Yeah, because like in our case, the dispatchers will, in the CAD system, mark the roadway closed and then click like a checkbox, publish that to Waze, and it gets there via that direction.
Yeah, and that winds up working a lot faster in the algorithm than Waze, depending on probe vehicle speeds.
Yep. And then when it's opened up, removing that and it's gone, Waze still might reroute you, obviously, because of congestion, but at least the closure's not present anymore.
Right.
I mean, maybe what comes out of this, sorry, go ahead, David.
So this is really a good topic to speak on here, because as we're looking at the EDC6, it's not just these innovations and technologies, it's actually expanding TIM to the arterials. And so with you having a local TMC, I see this as a really good opportunity to try to facilitate some of the local stuff into your TMC for this information as part of our project as well.
Thank you for pointing that out, David.
Jason, do you see with this research here, I mean, maybe you mentioned how the CAD systems are different, does there become like a standard that maybe could be developed? So I can see where the notes issue comes into play, but then if there's a closure, if there's some standard language or functions in there that people agree upon, and most of the providers seem to have a standard nomenclature, if it's closing lanes 1, 2, or 3 or all, but
yeah.
And then by direction. But if some of those things were all done the same way, it'd probably be easier for that to, get filtered out and sent to you.
Yeah, I think moving this forward and getting it in greater application might help facilitate those discussions with the CAD vendors. And I mean, there's multiple CAD vendors, so trying to get them together to come up with some kind of standard could be a direction in the future. But I think it would be where the community is trying to show how we're trying to use it and what the power is to make that case for standardization without infringing upon their, individual products.
Right.
Well, thank you guys for this fantastic discussion. Does anyone have any questions? I mean, Brian, you brought up some points, so I was wondering if any other questions came as a result. Well, it looks good. We're at a point now, it's 3:20. So if you want to stay on the call, it's fine. We just allow that opportunity for anyone who needs to jump off now. And then we will go into our council roundtable, which is mainly STIC members, but it can be anyone if you have something you want to share. And we just want updates to hear what's going on in your neck of the woods. But again, if you have any questions, last chance, right? And Darren, you can lead off the council roundtable if you want, or you can go at the end, your call.
So I can wait to see if anybody has any big updates that they want to share.
Sounds good. Fire away. Brian, do you want to start?
Yeah, I know for us, we're trying to find ways to integrate real-time traffic information into our response time and route. So we've done some exploration with INREX and also possibly looking at WeJo, but trying to find that, and then working with COG on how I can get the funding stuff worked out. It is currently a project that was selected under their traffic incident management program call for projects. But I know the IT world, when you're trying to do things, that doesn't always move really fast. There's just lots of complicated things and processes to try and work through and testing and figure things out. So we're still in that exploration stage, but I'm hopeful that can be something that can come forward on our team work here.
And Brian, you mentioned INREX. You have access to our statewide contract, correct?
That's correct. So that's where we've pulled and kind of got to play in the sandbox in their IT folks and trying to use it. It's coming down to what we can make happen, and if our CAD vendor can absorb it the right way, because currently just the way they do, they get like a static map update from us daily. All of a sudden, if this is real time and we're passing it from GIS to them, can they make the changes on their end to work that out?
Shelley, do you know if there's another one that had something?
Well, thank you, Brian, for your comments. And as far as going around the room here, I know a lot of people had to drop off, so we don't have our normal group. So it's kind of up to you if you want to speak up what you've been up to. Is there someone from NCT COG that wants to talk about what you guys have been doing lately? I know that some are not available, so. Anyone there? Aaron, do you have anything on the LTAP side?
Hey, Shelley. Yeah, I can just give a quick update. I think everyone got to hear Ray's update on our STIC incentive project for the strategic workforce development. So we're wrapping up that project this month, but the LTAP Center will continue any support to cities and counties on that for anything based on that project, especially any technical assistance that the city and counties might need. But we are just continuing to offer training in person, just as different agencies and localities request it. And we're following all of their local guidelines just to deliver training safely. And we're following all of that very closely with our trainers. And so we're continuing training in the field as requested by those cities and counties. And then we also have our technical assistance service that we continue to promote, and our lending library. So we just, are continuing to promote our products and services, and collaborate with anyone who wants to put on any training programs. But that's all the updates I have. Thanks, Shelley.
Great. No, I appreciate that update. Darren?
So I see Andy Mao on here, and if he wants, it'd be great to hear just quickly what's going on with Connect Smart and his ATC MTD grant. Or maybe he checked out on us.
Well, I know I saw Andy there. Andy, muted if you're trying to speak up. But if you do not have anything to add, I see David Palmer's on. David, do you want to say anything about some of the TIM activities going on?
Sure. We actually are continuing to conduct training both internally and externally. I think it's been exceptionally well received from what I've been told, the reports I've gotten. I mean, we got some really good instructors, and they're enthusiastic, and because we know, I mean, we're trying to make sure that we've really incorporated it real heavily within DPS, because we understand the bigger impacts to traffic flow and all that, and we're trying to politely, share that with local agencies and not just law enforcement, but EMS and fire, who sometimes don't quite understand the importance of trying to maintain traffic flow. So yeah, been good progress on that. Other thing I was going to touch on is a couple of things. One, that we continued. I found it interesting that one of the presentations was showing the use of drones, and that just that was something I wanted to touch on for DPS. But we continue to really kind of expand our program and our use for drones. As of I think the last training they did internally, we've got agency-wide, we've got about 100, I think on the list I got was 199 folks that have got their certification or licensing to operate drones. And that crosses, I mean, THP is, the Highway Patrol is the biggest batch of those folks, and it's primarily related to our regional and our state crash teams, because that has drastically helped with reconstructing scenes and avoiding as much inconvenience to motorists as we possibly can. But beyond THP, we're even using it. Some of our drone pilots are assisting with using them for crowd monitoring, where you've got things like that, standoffs. We're using them at the border pretty heavily. Even our administration division has got one person certified to use it, as part of the building programs piece. And so it's really interesting because we've got THP, we've got Rangers, our criminal investigation division folks, and various others. Even our tactical marine unit is getting spun up, and they're trying to upgrade some of their drones for night capabilities to help be able to use those to do some reconnaissance, especially in the locations down on the border that they're at. So it's pretty exciting stuff, because the capabilities, in some respects, are limited by our imagination. So I just wanted to share that. And also kind of a big project that we've got going on in the THP division is we've been using a mobile in-car system, for basically our tickets and warnings and commercial vehicle inspection reports, which also, integrates you know, TLETs and all kinds of, you know, registration databases and other things, driver's license. But the system that we've been using for probably, I don't know, 15, 20 years. And it's old technology, and it's really a lot of trouble to keep going. So they've, as a division, we've been very aggressive over the last, I don't know, probably the fastest procurement process we as an agency have ever done. But we're nearing the end of that process to be able to purchase a new upgraded system, which we're pretty excited about, potentially giving us capabilities that we haven't had in our current system, and brings us into the 21st century as far as technology. So anyway, that's all I wanted to share.
Thank you for that. That's really helpful information. And you had a lot going on over there. I also see that we have, there's Sean might be representing his group today. If you want to say anything, Sean. And then I see Tiffany on, but Sean, okay, go ahead.
Howdy, this is Sean Merrill. I'm with the ASCE Texas section. If you're a civil engineer and you're interested, our big conference, annual conference is coming up at CECon. It's in San Marcos, September 15th through 17th. I will be posting right now a link to it. We will have a TxSTIC panel there. A lot of TxSTIC folks from different divisions will be there in a roundtable, and we're also inviting the heads of the DOTs from TxDOT, New Mexico DOT, and Oklahoma DOT to give a roundtable on innovation. So anybody's interested, come on out and listen to that. And then the other thing we've got going on is we've got a task committee where we're looking at the winter storms that happened earlier this year. And what that is we're trying to just come up with some really logical ways for our legislators to look at what happened and give them a real unbiased view of what really happened, what needs to happen going forward. The committee is called Beyond Storms Infrastructure Network Resiliency Committee. And we've been working on this for a few months. We've got different components of it, talking about electricity and power, energy, natural gas, telecommunications, water, wastewater. But one of the subcommittees is under transportation, and we're needing help. We need somebody to step up, and you don't necessarily have to be an ASC member, but if anybody's interested in that, please reach out to me. We've got a really good committee, and they're coming up with some high-level data and some high-level stuff for a report that's going to be going to the Texas legislators later this year. So that's available for anyone to help out with if they're so interested.
Great. I noticed there was a hand. Brenda, did you want to say something? We can't hear you yet.
Yes, actually, but it looks like Andy's back on, so I'll let him give the update for our ATCMT project. Thank you.
Sorry, I have to step away. I'll only say on the high level, because if you need any detailed questions, Brenda is running the program, the day-to-day operations. We are progressing as planned and as our schedule. And even though, you know, as like any other project, there's going to be some unexpected situations. And the most recent one, I think Darren is very familiar with, is the tense situation in Houston with some local government. So we were going to do the full launch in September, and now we may have to do extended beta launch. You know, hopefully it won't really impact the overall schedule, but we're just going to call it different things. So the level of efforts, you know, try to go out and try to make those things. We're going to try to tone it down a little bit, and just, you know, just going through with our beta, you know, testing things. And so Brenda, you want to talk about any specific update?
No, just to possibly give a recap of what our project is. Our ATCMTD program is the deployment of a multimodal mobility platform for the Houston region. We've been working extremely hard with not only our local governments, but entities in terms of integrating mobility options into the platform. We have worked with the MPO to support and we're going to be supporting their commute solutions program by providing the technology through the app to support their commute solutions, and they promote telework, carpooling, and so forth for the commuters, various options. We've integrated the Metro ticketing payment into our system, and as well as their GTFS, and we're slowly integrating other GTFS from other providers. We have about 8 to 10 transit providers in the region, so we're working with them and in conjunction with the MPO who are doing a lot of the heavy lifting. We have several other pilots happening as well with some of our other partners, but really the emphasis is in data integration that we've been conducting this past couple of months or year. But we're very excited to be able to be beta testing the app. So we're currently beta testing, and that's pretty much the updates for today. Thank you. Appreciate the time.
I think I'll say one more thing. We have an integrated trip planning and the payment system together. So you don't have to sign off on one app to go to another. You can do it all within the same app. And thanks to Metro, working with on that using their vendor, so we were able to do the integration.
That's great. Thanks for that. We'll follow up with you on that.
The only one I see Tiffany is on. Tiffany, did you have an update for us today?
Nope, thank you. Sean went ahead and did it on behalf of Texas ASCE.
Okay, great. Thank you so much. And
You're
then
welcome.
I noticed some of the FHWA attendees are back on. Did y'all want to say anything, Millie or Kirk? Did y'all have anything to comment or update us on? I mean, they might be attending 2 meetings at once. So that brings it to you, Darren, if they have nothing.
Yeah, I'll just close it out. Really great updates today, and it's always really fast. But all the traffic incident work, it was great to hear about what's happening with the virtual public involvement. And in fact, I think I've learned that we might be able to take advantage of that within our division. So, I mean, it's always, we learn as much as we hopefully are sharing when we go out there. And the whole LTAP progress has been fantastic. And I think the STIC effort has just really enhanced and expanded our LTAP effort in ways that we may not have expected. And then the weather responsive work continues to be great. And I'm really excited about the Aspire work. I recall talking to them a few years ago, it seems like, and it's good to see that it's actually moving out. And I think there's opportunities where we can tie in a lot of efforts around the state. So, just thanks for all the updates. We will aspire to get some more information out there. There are a lot of activities going on in the department. It seems like this summer, just a waterfall happened. So we've got to work to get that information out and shared broadly with the STIC members and see if that doesn't generate even more ideas for what we should be doing with this team. And then also for the next meeting. So thank you for your time today.
Thank you all. I really appreciate everyone being here today. Thank you, Darren.
Thanks, Shelley. Thank you, Darren.
All right, we'll see you next time.